My name is Maya, and I'm 28 years old. For most of my life, my family treated me like their personal maid. My parents, Karen and Robert, adored my older sister, Isabella, like she was some kind of star, while I was just there. I cooked, I cleaned, and I stayed out of the way. They never saw me as important. What they didn't know was that while I was washing their dirty dishes and running errands, I was secretly building something. Big something that would one day change my life completely. The biggest shock of their lives came last Christmas, when the powerful CEO they were desperate to impress looked right at me and said, "Boss, we need your approval on this." That was the moment everything changed. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood, just outside of Boston. From the outside, our house looked like the perfect family home. My dad worked as a financial advisor at a local bank, and my mum was a real estate agent. They weren't rich, but they were obsessed with appearances. They cared so much about what other people thought of us. My sister Isabella was 5 years older than me. From my earliest memories, she was treated like a princess, the golden child who could do no wrong. When I look back at our family photos, the pattern is clear. Isabella is always front and center in every picture, smiling in a new, expensive dress. Me, I was usually standing off to the side, wearing her old clothes that no longer fit her, half cropped out of the frame. But it wasn't just about clothes or pictures. It was about love and value. Isabella was showered with attention, while I was given tasks. At family dinners, my dad would always say, "Maya, go help your mother with the dishes," while Isabella sat at the table. Talking about her day, I realized something wasn't right when I was just 7 years old. I went to my friend Emma's house for dinner one night, and I noticed something surprising. After they ate, everyone cleared their own plates and took turns doing chores. It felt so fair. At my house, it was different. I wasn't just a helper. I was the worker by the time I turned 10. I could cook a full meal for 4 people, not because I enjoyed it, but because my mum insisted I needed to learn practical skills. Meanwhile, Isabella was being signed up for piano lessons, tennis camp, and private tutors to make her already good grades even better. "Your sister is going to be someone important someday," my mum would say, making sure I could hear her from the kitchen. "We need to give her every advantage." I was good at school, too, especially math. I even taught myself basic computer programming from books I borrowed from the library. When I asked my parents for a computer one Christmas, I remember the way they looked at me, like I was asking for a spaceship. "What would you even do with a computer? Play games all day?" My dad scoffed. 3 months later, they bought Isabella a brand new laptop for her high school graduation. She barely used it, except to scroll through social media. My 12th birthday is burned into my memory. I'd been hinting for weeks that I wanted to have a small party with just a few friends. The day before my birthday, I overheard my parents talking in the kitchen. "We really can't afford a party right now," my dad said. "We just paid for Isabella's trip to Europe with her French class." "I know," my mum sighed. "We'll make it up to Maya next year." They never did. The next day, my birthday came and went with almost no celebration. They gave me a single cupcake with a candle and a card signed by all 3 of them. Isabella handed me a keychain she'd picked up in Paris, clearly an afterthought. That was it. By the time I was 14, I decided I couldn't rely on my parents for anything. I started working, first helping our neighbor Mrs. Green with her garden for $5 an hour. At 15, I got a real part-time job stocking shelves at the local grocery store. My parents didn't see this as independence or ambition. They saw it as proof that I wasn't meant for greatness. At least Maya is practical, they would tell relatives. Not everyone can be as gifted as Isabella. What they didn't know was that I was saving every penny I had discovered. A summer coding camp that cost $800. and I was determined to attend. When I finally saved up enough and told my parents about it, their reaction was predictable. "That's a waste of money, sweetheart," my mum said. "Why not save for something useful, like a car?" I went to the camp anyway. Those 2 weeks changed my life. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who actually valued what I could do. My final project even won first place. The instructor pulled me aside and said something I'll never forget. "You have a rare talent. Maya, don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I came home feeling proud and excited, but that feeling didn't last. The certificate I had framed and hung on my wall mysteriously disappeared. During one of my mum's cleaning days, when I asked her about it, she shrugged and said she thought it was just some camp paperwork. The same pattern continued throughout high school. Isabella was sent to an expensive private college to study law. My parents paid for everything: tuition, books, housing, even her spending money. Meanwhile, I stayed up late every night studying, determined to earn scholarships because I knew my parents weren't saving a dime for me. The guidance counselor even suggested I consider community college. Whenever my parents talked about Isabella, they were so proud. "Our Isabella is going to be a lawyer." When people asked about me, they'd say, "Maya is good with computers. She figures something out." But I was more than good. I was exceptional, even if they couldn't see it. Against everyone's expectations, including my parents, I earned a full scholarship to MIT, one of the best schools in the country, to study computer science. The day the acceptance letter arrived, I ran into the house, heart pounding with excitement. "Mum, Dad, I got into MIT. Full scholarship," I shouted, waving the letter. My mum didn't even look up from her magazine. "That's nice, dear. Did you remember to take the chicken out of the freezer for dinner?" My dad gave a small nod. "Unexpected. Good for you, Maya." Then he went back to watching TV. 3 years earlier, when Isabella got accepted into Harvard Law School, there had been a huge champagne celebration. They sent out announcements to every relative and friend. Packing for college was a lonely experience for me. Isabella had been given brand new luggage, bedding, and a shopping spree before she left for Harvard. I had to buy 2 old suitcases at a thrift store with my own money. When I left home for MIT, my mum only offered one helpful reminder: "Don't forget which kitchen tools are yours to take. You'll need to cook for yourself now." Arriving at MIT felt like stepping into another world. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who didn't compare me to my sister. I met Chloe, my new roommate, who quickly became my best friend. She was also a computer science major, with wild red hair and the kind of laugh that could light up a whole room. "Maya, you code like you're conducting an orchestra," she told me. "One night, after watching me work, your fingers never stopped moving." Hearing that kind of praise felt strange. But good. Chloe was horrified when she learned about my family and how they'd treated me. "They don't deserve you," she said firmly. "From now on, we're your family." To cover expenses not included in my scholarship, I juggled 3 jobs: mornings at a campus coffee shop, weekends at the university IT help desk, and evenings freelancing as a web developer for local businesses. I barely slept, but I was happy because, for once, I felt like my life had a purpose. During my junior year at MIT, something amazing happened. I landed a highly competitive internship at a financial technology startup called Data Secure. The company was working on cutting-edge security systems for banking apps. It felt like a dream come true. On my second week there, I noticed a serious vulnerability in their code while reviewing a project late at night. I was nervous about bringing it up because I was just an intern and everyone else was so experienced, but I couldn't ignore it. I went to my supervisor, a guy named Adam, and quietly explained what I had found. He looked at me for a moment, then leaned back in his chair. "Maya, you just saved us from a potential disaster," he said with wide eyes. Most people wouldn't have caught that, let alone spoken up about it. By the end of that internship, they offered me a part-time remote position so I could keep working for them while finishing my degree. It was the first time I was making real money doing something I truly loved. That summer, instead of going home where I'd inevitably be stuck cleaning and cooking like a servant, I stayed in Cambridge with Chloe. We rented a tiny, sweltering apartment with barely enough space for 2 beds and a desk. The rent was dirt cheap, but to us, it felt like freedom. One night, while sitting on the floor, surrounded by energy drink cans and takeout boxes, Chloe looked at me with excitement in her eyes. "You know, Maya," she said, "we've been talking about how frustrating online security is for small businesses. What if we actually did something about it?" I raised an eyebrow. Like, what? Start a company. Exactly, she said, practically bouncing with energy. We could create a simple, affordable security system for small to mid-sized financial institutions. You're brilliant at coding, and I'm great at operations and strategy. We'd make an incredible team. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. Starting a company isn't exactly the safe path, I said cautiously. You know how my parents are, they want me to have a stable, predictable job. Chloe laughed. Your parents don't get a vote in this. It's your life, Maya. Why settle for stable when you could build something amazing? Her words stuck with me. That summer, while juggling my remote work for Data Secure, Chloe and I began sketching out ideas for our own product. We spent countless nights brainstorming, coding, and refining. Slowly, our vision started to take shape, a mobile app that could detect unusual patterns in financial transactions before they turned into full-blown security breaches. One evening, as we tested our prototype, Chloe looked at me with a huge grin. "This could be big," she whispered. "Like really big." Meanwhile, back home, life hadn't changed at all. Every time I called my parents, the conversations were one. My mom would gush about Isabella's achievements, like how she landed an internship at Wilson & Craft, a top-tier law firm. They almost never take first-year law students, but they made an exception for her, my mom bragged. Her professor says she could make partner by That's great, Mom, I said, waiting for her to ask about my summer. She didn't single quotes tear dot. Instead, she added, "Anyway, when are you coming home? The gutters need cleaning, and your dad's back has been acting up." I lied and said I was busy with summer classes. The truth, I couldn't bear to go home and be treated like the family maid while working so hard to create a future for myself. By the time senior year rolled around, Chloe and I were ready to pitch our app to investors. We walked into our first meeting nervous but hopeful. There were 5 investors at a long table, all older men in suits. Chloe did most of the talking while I handled the technical side. When we finished, one of the men leaned forward and said, "Impressive work. Who's the lead developer?" "That would be Maya," Chloe said proudly, gesturing toward me. The man raised his eyebrows. "Really? You coded all of this yourself?" I nodded confidently. Every single line. They didn't say much after that, but when we left the meeting, one of them followed us out to the hallway and offered us a deal on the spot, our first real investment. $50,000. Chloe and I were ecstatic. "This is it," she said, hugging me tightly. "We're officially in business." As graduation approached, my parents finally started paying attention, but not for the reasons I hoped. They couldn't skip my graduation without looking bad in front of relatives and neighbors. So they reluctantly agreed to come. A few weeks before the ceremony, my dad called me. "So, what are your plans after graduation?" he asked. "There are some entry-level IT jobs at the bank. Not glamorous, but steady work." I took a deep breath. "Actually, Chloe and I are starting our own company." There was a long silence. "A company?" he repeated. "What kind of company?" "A cybersecurity firm for financial institutions. We already have initial funding. My mum got on the line, her tone sharp. Maya, be serious. Startups are unstable. You need a stable job with benefits. Don't throw your degree away on some silly experiment. Meanwhile, Isabella had just accepted a junior associate position at a top law firm. My parents praised her endlessly for choosing a real career. At my graduation ceremony, they spent most of the time telling relatives about Isabella's new apartment and her fancy job. When someone asked about me, my mum casually said, "Oh, Maya's doing something with computers. A small startup, nothing serious." I wanted to scream, but instead I stayed silent. I knew my time would come. 2 weeks later, Chloe and I officially launched our company, which we named SafeNet Solutions. Our first office was actually her uncle's garage. We bought second-hand desks, filled the place with extension cords, and got the fastest internet we could afford. We practically lived on instant noodles and coffee. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. The first 6 months were brutal. We pitched our idea to 27 different investors and got rejected 24 times. The 3 who didn't reject us outright strung us along for weeks before saying no. One night, after another crushing rejection, I sat on the garage floor surrounded by empty pizza boxes. Maybe this was a mistake, I said quietly. Maybe my parents were right. Chloe grabbed a crumpled napkin and tossed it at me. "Don't you dare quit. Maya, we're onto something important. They just don't see it yet." She was right. The problem wasn't our product hit, was our approach. We had been trying to compete with giant security firms instead of focusing on our unique strength, my algorithm, which could spot suspicious patterns in financial data before anyone else. So we pivoted. Instead of targeting massive banks, we started focusing on small to mid-sized institutions that couldn't afford the expensive, enterprise-level solutions but still needed protection. Within 2 months, we had our first 3 paying clients. Chloe opened a bottle of wine she'd been saving for a special occasion. "This is just the beginning," she said, grinning. "We're going to revolutionize financial security for the people who need it most." As our reputation grew, a trade magazine published an article about our innovative algorithm. Suddenly, those same investors who had rejected us started calling back, wanting in on the action. 1 year after our launch, we secured a massive round of funding. It was enough to move into a real office space and hire a small team. I remember standing in that empty office, holding the keys, completely overwhelmed. Chloe bumped my shoulder. "CEO Maya," she said with a laugh, "has a nice ring to it." "Co-CEOs," I corrected her. She shook her head. "No way. You're the technical genius and the visionary. I'm better with operations. You should be CEO and I'll be co." After some back and forth, I agreed. At just 23 years old, I officially became the Chief Executive Officer of a growing cybersecurity firm. Our first hire was Ethan, a brilliant security analyst with a background in both finance and tech. During his interview, he said something that stuck with me. "Your algorithm is unlike anything I've ever seen. The way it predicts threats before they even happen. It's revolutionary." Ethan quickly became a key player in our team, helping us land even more clients. For the first time in my life, I was valued in it for how well I could scrub a kitchen or fold laundry. But for my mind and my ideas, 2 years after Chloe and I started SafeNet Solutions, everything changed. Our company had grown from a small team of 5 to more than 20 employees. We had to move into a bigger office in downtown Boston to keep up with the demand. What started in Chloe's uncle's garage was now a buzzing tech hub with rows of desks, giant whiteboards full of ideas, and a big conference room where we met with clients. We specialized in providing affordable cybersecurity to smaller financial institutions, credit unions, community banks, and local financial service. companies that couldn't afford the big systems. It felt surreal to see something I'd once sketched on paper turn into a company that was truly making a difference, even though my life was completely different now. My family knew almost nothing about it. Whenever I visited home, which wasn't often, my parents acted like nothing had changed. My mum still expected me to help with dinner the moment I walked through the door. My dad barely asked me any questions about my work. My old bedroom had been turned into my dad's home office. Whenever I came home, I had to sleep on the uncomfortable pull-out couch in the den. Isabella's room, on the other hand, was perfectly preserved like a museum. Even though she had her own apartment in the city, it was clear who they valued more. When my mum introduced me to her friends, she'd say, "This is Maya. She works for some tech company," without even knowing or caring about the name of the company I'd built with my own hands. Meanwhile, she bragged endlessly about Isabella's law firm job, her fancy apartment, and her boyfriend Liam, who was a CFO at a major financial company called BlackRock Financial. While my family life stayed frustrating, my professional life was thriving. In our third year, SafeNet started getting attention from larger companies. The biggest turning point came when we signed a contract with BlackRock Financial, the same company where Isabella's boyfriend, Liam, worked. Their head of security had seen a presentation I gave at a tech conference and was blown away by our software. "We need this level of protection for our clients," he told me. "Name your price." That contract was worth millions and completely transformed our business. We were no longer a small startup. We were a major player in the cybersecurity world. With the new revenue, we expanded our team to 50 employees and opened a second office in New York City. For me personally, it was life-changing. I was able to buy my own apartment in Boston, a beautiful historic place with tall ceilings, big windows, and so much natural light. For the first time in my life, I had a space that truly felt like mine. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living the life I had always dreamed of. Of course, with growth came stress. My days were packed with meetings, product launches, and late-night strategy sessions. Chloe and I barely had time for ourselves, but we made it a point to take occasional vacations to recharge. Chloe wasn't just my business partner. She had become like family to me. Unlike my parents, she saw me for who I really was. She encouraged me, supported me, and reminded me to take care of myself. By our 5th year, SafeNet was valued at over $30 million. We had offices in 3 cities and over 100 employees. That year, I was featured on the Forbes 30 Under 30 list for finance and technology. It felt unreal seeing my name and picture in such a prestigious publication. My employees knew me as a fair but demanding leader. I encouraged innovation, celebrated their successes, and made sure everyone felt valued. Few of them knew about my complicated family situation, and I preferred it that way. I wanted to be judged by my work, not my past. One of our strongest team members was Ethan, the brilliant analyst we'd hired early on. Over time, he had risen to become our chief security officer and my right-hand man. Ethan wasn't just smart, he had a way of connecting with clients, especially high-profile ones like BlackRock. His insights helped us grow faster than we ever imagined. One evening, as we reviewed quarterly results, Ethan leaned back in his chair and said, "Maya, we're not just building a company anymore. We're changing the entire industry. And this is only the beginning." I smiled, feeling a rush of pride. "Yeah," I said softly. "Sometimes I can't believe how far we've come." But deep down, a small part of me still ached. My family had no idea. If they did, would it even matter to them? Or would they still see me as nothing more than the girl who cooked and cleaned? That year's Thanksgiving answered my question clearly. I drove 2 hours to my parents' house after closing a massive deal that very morning. I was exhausted but proud of what my team had accomplished. The moment I walked through the door, My mum shoved an apron into my hands. "Thank goodness you're finally here," she said breathlessly. "The potatoes need mashing, and the gravy isn't going to stir itself." There was no hello, no how are you, just instant orders. "Mum, I literally just got here after a long week," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Can I at least put my bag down first?" She frowned like I was being unreasonable. "We're all tired." Maya Isabella worked until 9 p.m. last night, preparing case files. But you don't hear her complaining. I bit my tongue and put on the apron. From the living room, I could hear my dad proudly telling relatives about Isabella's recent court victory. "She's the youngest associate to ever lead a corporate defense case at her firm," he boasted. "They're already talking about fast-tracking her to partner." Meanwhile, I was in the kitchen peeling potatoes like a servant. The irony was almost laughable. My company had just signed a contract worth more than Isabella's law firm would make in an entire year. But to my parents, it didn't matter. After dinner, which I had helped cook and serve one, of course. Clean up afterwards, Isabella announced something that caught my attention. "My boyfriend Liam is here tonight," she said proudly. "And he's the CFO at BlackRock Financial." I nearly choked on my drink. BlackRock was our biggest client. I had personally met with their executive team multiple times, but apparently not with Liam. "That's such a prestigious firm," my dad said approvingly. "They only hire the best of the best." Isabella beamed. "Liam says they're implementing a revolutionary new security system. It's supposed to save them millions in fraud prevention." I hid a small smile. She was talking about my system, the one I designed. Then my aunt turned to me politely. "What about you, Maya? Are you still doing that computer thing?" Before I could respond, my mum jumped in. "Maya works for some tech startup," she said dismissively. "Very small operation." I took a deep breath. "Actually, I'm the CEO," I said softly. My dad chuckled. These tech companies love fancy titles. CEO, customer service, reppits, all the same. The conversation quickly shifted back to Isabella and Liam. I excused myself to clear the table, trying to hide how much it hurt. Later, as I stood alone washing dishes, Isabella came into the kitchen. She poured herself another glass of wine and leaned against the counter. "So, this little company you work for," she said casually. "What's it called again?" "SafeNet Solutions," I replied without looking up. She shrugged. "Never heard of it." "Maybe someday your company will get bought out by a real firm." Her words stung, but I stayed quiet. If only she knew the truth, that her boyfriend's company depended on my system to stay secure. The next morning, as I packed to leave, my mom handed me a container of leftovers along with a piece of paper. "What's this?" I asked. "Just a few things we need you to take care of before Christmas," she said. "The gutters need cleaning, the guest room needs new curtains, and the basement is a mess. Since you're not as busy as Isabella, you can handle it." I stared at her in disbelief. "Mom, I run a company with over 100 employees. I'm very busy." She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, playing on computers all day isn't the same as real work. Isabella works 14-hour days on serious legal cases." I didn't argue. There was no point. In their eyes, I would always be the less successful daughter, no matter how much I achieved. When I drove back to Boston, I felt a mix of anger and determination. If they couldn't see my worth, fine. I didn't need their approval. Instead, I threw myself into work. Chloe and I were developing a new security protocol that could revolutionize how financial data was protected. It was our most ambitious project yet, and I was determined to make it a success. One evening, after a long video meeting with our New York team, Chloe gave me a sympathetic look. "Family visit didn't go well, huh?" I sighed. "The usual. Apparently, being a CEO doesn't get me out of cleaning gutters." She rolled her eyes. You could just tell them, Maya. Show them your Forbes article. Let them see who you really are. I shook my head. They wouldn't believe it. And even if they did, they'd only care for the wrong reasons. Chloe nodded slowly. Maybe so. But one day, they're going to find out. And when they do, it's going to be epic. Little did we know, that day was coming soon, and it would happen in the most dramatic way imaginable. 2 weeks before Christmas. I was in the middle of an important meeting with potential investors when my phone started buzzing non-stop. It was my mum, Karen, calling over and over. At first I ignored it, thinking it couldn't be that urgent. But when she called 6 times in less than 30 minutes, I excused myself from the meeting to answer. Mum, what's going on? Is everything okay? Is someone hurt? I asked, concerned by her persistence. Everything's fine, she said casually, as if calling me a dozen times during work hours was no big deal. But we need to discuss Christmas plans. I closed my eyes, already feeling a headache coming on. Mom, I'm in the middle of a huge deal right now. Can this wait? Absolutely not, she insisted. This year's Christmas is very special. We need you to come home earlier than usual, at least 3 days before. Christmas Eve. I frowned. I was planning to fly in on the 23rd, like always. Why do I need to come so early? Because we're hosting an important dinner this year, she said, in a tone that suggested this was a matter of life and death. Liam's family will be joining us, along with some of his company's executives. It's a big deal for your father's business connections, for Isabella and Liam's relationship. Oh no. I could already see where this was headed. Let me guess, I said flatly. You want me to help with all the preparations? Well, of course, she said, as if it were obvious. Isabella will be busy entertaining Liam and his family. These are very important people, Maya. You understand, don't you? I clenched my jaw. Mom, I already have plans for Christmas. Chloe and I rented a beach house in Florida with some friends. We've been planning this trip for months. Her voice instantly turned icy. Plans with friends. This is family, Maya. This dinner is crucial for your father's career and for Isabella's future with Liam. Surely your little vacation can wait. It's not just a vacation, I said, trying to keep calm. It's the only break I've had all year. I've been working non-stop, working at that little tech thing you do. She cut me off. Maya, this is about supporting your family. Liam could become part of our family, and these connections matter. Your sister has a real chance to build something meaningful here. Each dismissive word felt like a slap. I had built a multi-million-dollar company from nothing, but to her, it was still just that little tech thing. I took a deep breath, knowing there was no point arguing. I'll see what I can do, I said noncommittally. Good, she replied, satisfied. We'll need help cooking, cleaning, and setting up the guest rooms. Since Liam's parents will be staying in your old bedroom, you'll sleep on the sofa bed in the den. Her words hit me like a bucket of cold water. You're giving my room to strangers, and I'm supposed to sleep on a pull-out couch. Oh, don't be dramatic, she said dismissively. It's only for a few nights. I could barely believe what I was hearing. Not only was I expected to cook and clean for more than 20 people, but I wouldn't even have a proper place to sleep in the house I grew up in. How many people are we talking about, exactly? I asked, my voice tight. Oh, just 22 or so, she said with a little laugh. Nothing we can't handle if we all pitch in. By we, she obviously meant me. I rubbed my forehead. That's a lot of people. Mum, maybe we should consider hiring a caterer. She gasped like I'd suggested burning the house down and waste money. Absolutely not. Besides, Liam mentioned how much he values home-cooked meals. It shows character. I was so stunned I couldn't even respond right away. She didn't care that I had a demanding career or that I deserved to enjoy my own holiday. She only cared about impressing Liam and his family. "I'll need to check my work schedule and get back to you," I said finally. "There's nothing to check, Maya. This is happening." "I'll email you the menu and guest list so you can prepare," she said firmly. "We need you here by the 21st at the latest." And with that, she hung up, leaving me standing in the hallway of my office, shaking with frustration that night. I vented to Chloe over the phone. "Let me get this straight," she said slowly, her voice full of disbelief. "They want you to cancel our vacation, which we've been planning for 6 months so you can cook and clean for 22 people, including executives from our biggest client, while sleeping on a sofa bed because your room is being given to strangers. That about sums it up," I said bitterly. "And they still don't know you're the CEO of the company protecting Liam's firm from disaster." "Nope," I said, popping the P. "As far as they know, I work at some tiny little startup that barely matters." Chloe was quiet for a moment, then said, "Maya, I love you, but at some point, you have to stop setting yourself on fire to keep these people warm." Her words hit me hard. She was right. For years, I'd been bending over backward for my family, hoping for scraps of approval. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. "You're right," I said finally, my voice firm. "I'm going to Florida." Chloe sounded surprised, but pleased. "Really? You're not going to cave this time?" "Not this time," I promised. "But I'm not going to tell them yet. If I do, they'll spend weeks trying to wear me down. I'll let them think I'm coming, then just not show up." Chloe chuckled, a little passive-aggressive, but understandable. "Baby steps, right?" "Exactly," I said with a small laugh. The next day, I called my mum back, pretending to agree. "I've arranged things at work," I said sweetly. "I'll be there on the 21st. "Excellent," she exclaimed, sounding more excited than she had in years. "I knew you'd do the right thing. Now, I've started a shopping list for you. We'll need to deep clean the house before the guests arrive. And I was thinking you could prep some dishes ahead of time and freeze them." "Sure, Mum, whatever you need," I said, the lie bitter on my tongue. Over the next week, she sent me daily texts with more and more tasks. The menu kept expanding: 5 appetizers, 3 main courses, 7 side dishes, and for desserts, the guest list grew to... As my parents added more of my dad's business associates, my dad sent me exactly one text message: "Bring your nice clothes. These are important people." Not once did either of them ask how I was doing, or if I needed help. I was just a means to an end, 2 days before I was supposed to arrive. I boarded a plane to Florida with Chloe and 4 of our closest colleagues. As the plane took off, I turned off my phone and leaned back in my seat, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. "Merry Christmas to me," I whispered, staring at the clouds below when we landed in Key West. The warm Florida sun felt like freedom. The beach house we'd rented was incredibly huge property with ocean views, a private pool, and enough bedrooms for everyone to have their own space. It was a world away from the cold, judgmental atmosphere of my parents' home. That first night, Chloe raised a glass of champagne as we sat on the deck, watching the sunset. "To freedom," she said with a grin. "2 boundaries," I added, clinking my glass against hers. For the first time in years, I felt truly relaxed. I even turned my phone back on, but set it to do not disturb, allowing only work emergencies to get through. The dozens of frantic texts and missed calls from my mum went unread. I knew I'd have to deal with the fallout eventually, but for now, I was focused on enjoying the holiday I deserved. On Christmas Eve morning, we were preparing a relaxed brunch on the terrace when my work phone rang. It was Ethan, our chief security officer, calling from the emergency line that bypassed my settings. My stomach dropped. "Ethan, what's wrong?" I answered immediately. His voice was tense. "Sorry to disturb your vacation, Maya, but we have a situation. BlackRock system is flagging our latest security patch as malicious code. It's shutting down critical functions. Their entire trading platform is at risk if we don't fix this within the hour. In an instant, my CEO instincts kicked in. Have you tried the rollback protocol we set up? Yes, but it's requiring executive authorization codes that only you have, he said. I need your approval to implement the override sequence. Got it, I said, already walking away from the group to find a quiet spot. Where are you right now? At a client dinner, Ethan replied. BlackRock invited several vendors to a holiday gathering, so it's a bit chaotic trying to handle this discreetly. In the background, I could hear clinking glasses, laughter, and holiday music. Then I heard something that made my blood run cold, my mother's laugh. Ethan, I said slowly, where exactly is this dinner happening? At a house in the suburbs, he said. I think it's the home of one of Liam's contacts. Why? A sinking feeling hit my stomach. Is the address 247 Maple Avenue in Lexington? There was a pause. Yes. How did you know that? I closed my eyes. Because that's my parents' house, I said quietly. Ethan was silent for a moment, trying to process what I'd just said. Wait a second. Your parents' house. That would mean yes, I interrupted, my voice tight. The person hosting that dinner is my family. He hesitated. Maya, does that mean Liam the CFO I've been working with is Isabella's boyfriend? Exactly, I confirmed, pacing back and forth on the balcony. And my parents are bending over backward to impress him and his company tonight, completely unaware that I'm the one whose system protects their entire financial network. There was a long pause as Ethan pieced everything together. So, let me get this straight, he said finally. Your family has no idea what you actually do for a living. None, I said bitterly. They've never bothered to ask. They think I work for some tiny tech startup that barely matters. They have no clue that I'm the CEO of SafeNet, the company they're trying to impress tonight. But Maya, your name is in tech magazines, on our website. There was even that Forbes feature. Ethan said, clearly baffled. I let out a humorless laugh. My parents don't read tech news, and even if they stumbled across it, they wouldn't connect the dots. In their minds, I'm just the kid who cleans up after everyone else. The absurdity of it all suddenly struck me. Here was my family, hosting a lavish dinner to impress Liam and his executives, while I, the very person whose work made Liam's job possible, was supposed to be there cooking and scrubbing dishes. Ethan, I said slowly, let me guess, my mother's freaking out right now, isn't she? He chuckled awkwardly. Yeah. She keeps peeking into the kitchen and looking more panicked by the minute. I think she's realizing she has no idea how to feed 22 important guests without you there. I couldn't help but laugh, even though my chest was tight with emotion. I bet she is. She probably planned everything around me, doing all the work, like always. What do you want me to do, Maya? Ethan asked, lowering his voice. Should I cover for you? Make up some excuse? I considered my options. I could stay in Florida, sip champagne, and let them deal with the chaos. I could call and tell them I was delayed by work, buying myself time, or I could finally reveal the truth once and for all. A calm determination settled over me. Double quotes, Ethan. I need you to do me a favor, I said firmly. In exactly 10 minutes, step outside and video call me. Make sure you're somewhere visible to everyone, especially Liam, Isabella, and my parents. Oh, okay, he said, clearly intrigued. But what about the override code? There really isn't a security issue, is there? I froze. Wait, there's no emergency. There was a sheepish pause. Not exactly, Ethan admitted. Liam mentioned that you were supposed to be here cooking tonight, but when you didn't show up, your mum started panicking. He seemed worried about how it would look to his family and the other executives. So, I came up with a work emergency story to explain your absence. I let out a slow breath. Ethan, you staged a fake crisis to protect my reputation with them. I thought I was helping, he said quickly. I didn't realize it would get this complicated. Despite my frustration, I couldn't help but feel touched by his loyalty. Thank you, Ethan, but no more lies. It's time for some truth. Exactly 10 minutes later, my phone lit up with Ethan's video call. I answered immediately, making sure the view behind me clearly showed the palm trees, beach, and bright Florida sun. I wanted there to be no mistake about where I really was. Ethan, status update. I asked in my most professional CEO voice, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. On screen, I could see Ethan had positioned himself in my parents' living room. The place was packed. Guests were mingling, holding drinks, and trying to hide their confusion. My mum hovered near the kitchen door, clearly on edge. My dad stood stiffly by the fireplace, attempting awkward small talk with an older couple. Isabella was front and center. Clinging to Liam's arm, Ethan spoke formally. We need your authorization for the protocol adjustment. Ms. Bennett, as CEO, only you can approve changes of this magnitude. The room froze at the word CEO. My mum's head snapped toward him like she'd been slapped. My dad's brow furrowed in confusion. Isabella's jaw dropped slightly. Of course, I said smoothly, playing along. I'll review the parameters now. BlackRock is one of our most important clients. We can't afford any security vulnerabilities. The living room grew quiet. You could hear a pin drop as Ethan slowly turned his phone so everyone could see me clearly. Liam stepped forward, his eyes widening in recognition. Wait, Maya Tracy Bennett from SafeNet Solutions. I gave him a polite smile. Hello, Liam. I apologize for not being there tonight to cook dinner for everyone as expected. As you can see, I had a prior commitment. My mum pushed her way into view, her face a mixture of shock and anger. Maya, what on earth is going on? Where are you? We have 22 guests here and no food prepared. I met her gaze calmly. I'm in Florida, Mum. On the vacation I told you about, the one you said was less important than me cooking and cleaning for your party. But she stammered, looking wildly between me and Ethan. I don't understand. Liam gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Mrs. Bennett, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Maya isn't just an employee at some little tech startup. SafeNet is one of BlackRock's most crucial security partners. Maya is the founder and CEO. The color drained from my mother's face. My dad looked like someone had just told him the earth was flat. That's impossible, he said, his voice flat. Maya works for some small computer company. She's not. Ethan cleared his throat. Sir, SafeNet protects financial institutions across the entire country. Maya built the algorithm that keeps BlackRock's trading platform safe. She's one of the most respected leaders in the industry. Isabella pushed her way to the front, her expression a mix of disbelief and dawning horror. Wait, you're Liam's boss. Not directly, I clarified, keeping my tone professional. SafeNet is a vendor partner to BlackRock. But yes, Liam and I work closely together. Liam added, his voice full of admiration. I just never made the connection that you were Isabella's sister. Maya, you're practically a legend in our field. The silence that followed was deafening. My parents stood frozen, trying to reconcile the image of me as their family's maid with the truth now staring them in the face. Finally, I spoke, my voice calm but firm. I should let you all get back to your evening. I'm sure you can figure out dinner arrangements. Maybe order takeout. The Italian place on Main Street delivers on holidays. Maya, wait, my mom pleaded. We didn't know exactly, I said sharply. You never bothered to ask. I glanced at Ethan. Ethan, please handle the real security protocols when you get back to the office. Enjoy your holiday, everyone. And with that, I ended the call. For a moment, I just stood there on the balcony, staring at my reflection on the dark phone screen. I felt a rush of emotion, satisfaction, relief, and a bittersweet ache in my chest. I hadn't planned for it to happen this way, but maybe it was perfect. For years they had refused to see me for who I truly was. Now they had no choice. Chloe appeared beside me, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "From that look on your face," she said with a grin, "I'm guessing the secret's out." I nodded, taking a glass from her. In spectacular fashion, she laughed. "Good. Now we can enjoy the rest of our vacation without your phone blowing. Up for gravy recipes." For the first time in years, I felt truly light. I raised my glass toward the setting sun. "To new beginnings," I said. "To freedom," Chloe added. Clinking her glass against mine, we both laughed, knowing this Christmas would be one none of us would ever forget. The days after Christmas passed in a blur of sun, sand, and laughter, while my family was probably scrambling to salvage their ruined dinner party. I was on the beach with Chloe and our friends, soaking up the warm Florida sun. It was the first time in years that I felt completely free. No guilt, no obligations, just peace. I turned my personal phone off completely. I knew there would be dozens of angry texts and voicemails waiting for me, but I wasn't ready to deal with them yet. I needed space to process what had happened and prepare myself for whatever came next. When we flew back to Boston a few days into the new year, my stomach churned with a mix of nerves and curiosity. Would my parents apologize? Would they finally acknowledge what I'd accomplished? Or would they only care now because my success brought them bragging rights? I didn't have to wonder for long. 3 days after returning to the office, my receptionist buzzed me. "Maya, your parents and sister are in the lobby asking to see you," she said, sounding slightly panicked. "Did they have an appointment?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "No, but they insisted it's a family matter." I sighed, staring at my computer screen for a moment. "All right," I said finally. "Put them in conference room 3. I'll be there in 10 minutes. I didn't rush. Instead, I finished typing an important email, then took a slow walk down the hall. I needed those extra minutes to collect myself, to put on the emotional armor I knew I'd need for this conversation as I walked through the office. I couldn't help but notice how different this world was from the one my family had always imagined for me. Employees nodded respectfully as I passed. The company logo SafeNet Solutions was displayed proudly on the wall. My name was etched on the glass door of the corner office. This wasn't just some little tech job. This was a company I built from nothing, now thriving and making a real impact on the world. When I entered the conference room, my family was standing awkwardly near the floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the Boston skyline. My mum's eyes were red and puffy, either from tears or lack of sleep, couldn't tell which. My dad looked stiff and uncomfortable, while Isabella kept her gaze fixed on the table, avoiding my eyes. "Maya," my dad began, his voice unusually hesitant. "This is quite an impressive place you have here." "Thank you," I said simply, gesturing for them to sit down. "What can I do for you?" My mum's voice wavered as she spoke. "We came to apologize," she said, twisting her hands nervously. "We had no idea about any of this, about what you've accomplished." I sat across from them, keeping my tone neutral. "You never asked." They all flinched at my bluntness. "In all these years," I continued, "neither of you ever showed the slightest interest in my work or my life. You were too busy focusing on Isabella." Isabella finally looked up, her expression guilty. "I didn't know either, Maya," she said quietly. "I didn't realize how successful you are." "Of course you didn't," I said, my voice sharp. "You were too busy enjoying the preferential treatment while I was treated like a servant in my own home." My dad frowned. "That's not fair, isn't it?" I interrupted. my voice rising slightly. Tell me, Dad, when was the last time you asked me about my goals, my dreams, my career? When was the last time you treated me like anything other than free help? The room fell silent. Neither of them could answer. I took a deep breath and continued, my voice steadier now. Christmas was the final straw. You didn't just expect me to cook and clean for 22 people, including strangers. You didn't just dismiss my vacation plans like they didn't matter. You gave my childhood bedroom to Liam's parents and told me to sleep on a lumpy sofa bed. My mum's face crumpled as tears spilled down her cheeks. Maya, we made a terrible mistake. This isn't about one mistake, I said firmly. It's about a lifetime of being treated like I was less than. A lifetime of you praising Isabella while ignoring me. Isabella swallowed hard before speaking. Liam told me everything after you hung up, she said. About how respected you are in the industry. About how your security system is revolutionary. He couldn't believe we didn't know. I stared at her for a moment, then asked quietly, and would it have mattered if I wasn't successful? If I really did just work at a small tech startup like you've always assumed, would that justify the way you treated me? The question hung in the air, heavy and uncomfortable. Finally, my dad spoke, his voice low. No, he admitted. It wouldn't. We've been wrong, Maya. Terribly wrong. For a very long time, a strange calm settled over me. The thing is, I said, I didn't build this company to prove anything to you. I built it because I believed in myself. Even when you didn't. I stopped seeking your approval years ago because I realized it would never come. My mum reached across the table, trying to take my hand. I let her, though I didn't return the gesture. We're so proud of you now, she said, her voice breaking. We should have been proud all along. I shook my head slightly. Pride that only shows up after. You've been proven wrong isn't real pride. Mom, it's just recognition of status. The conversation continued for nearly an hour. They asked questions about my company, how I started it, how we grew so quickly, what my life was like now. Questions they should have been asking for years. I answered honestly, but kept my emotional walls high. I wasn't ready to forgive them. Not yet. When they finally stood to leave, my mum clutched my hands. Please, Maya, she said softly. Give us another chance. We want to do better. We will do better. I nodded once. We'll see. After they left, I sat alone in the conference room, staring out at the city lights. I felt drained. Like every ounce of energy had been pulled from my body. But beneath the exhaustion was a quiet sense of peace. For the first time, I had spoken my truth without holding back. For the first time, they had been forced to see me for who I really was. Forgiveness would take time, but at least the illusion was gone. They could never go back to treating me like the invisible maid, again, not now that they knew the reality. Over the following weeks, our relationship entered a cautious new phase. My parents made an effort to connect with me on my terms. My mum stopped, asking me to do household chores when I visited, which felt like a miracle in itself. My dad even started reading articles about cybersecurity, so he could have meaningful conversations with me. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Isabella struggled the most. Her entire identity had been built around being the golden child. Now, she had to face the fact that her little sister was a respected CEO whose work was literally protecting her boyfriend's company. At first, she was distant and awkward, but eventually, she began to accept the new reality. Slowly, we started building a relationship based on mutual respect instead of competition. Meanwhile, SafeNet continued to soar. With Liam and BlackRock as our biggest client. Doors opened left and right. We expanded internationally. Opening offices in London and Singapore, our security algorithms became the industry standard, protecting trillions of dollars worldwide. I bought a beautiful house on the coast, where I could wake up to the sound of ocean waves. It was a dream come true, a place of peace that I had earned through my own hard work. Through it all, Chloe remained my rock. She reminded me to set boundaries, to take care of myself, and to enjoy the life I had built. Looking back, I realized something important. My story wasn't just about proving my family wrong. It wasn't about revenge or even vindication. It was about freedom. Freedom from the need for their approval. Freedom from the toxic patterns that had defined my childhood. Freedom to live life on my own terms. For years, I thought the ultimate victory would be my parents finally recognizing my worth. But the real victory was realizing I didn't need them. The weeks after that first meeting with my family were strange. It felt like I was living in two different worlds. In one world, I was Maya Bennett, CEO of a rapidly expanding cybersecurity company, making decisions that impacted banks and financial institutions across the globe. In the other, I was still the daughter of Karen and Robert, the girl they used to call in to fix leaky faucets and mash potatoes for family dinners. The dynamic was shifting, but it didn't happen overnight. My parents started making small changes, the kind I never thought I'd see. When I visited home, my mum didn't immediately shove an apron into my hands or ask me to clean something. Instead, she'd actually sit down and talk with me, though the conversations were awkward at first. My dad surprised me the most. One evening, while I was visiting, he brought up an article he had read about cybersecurity. "I didn't realize how many scams target smaller banks," he said. "Genuinely curious. Your work must be making a huge difference for them." I nearly dropped my fork. For so many years, my dad had never asked about my job, never acknowledged my skills. That single question felt monumental. Isabella, however, had the hardest time adjusting. She had always been the star, the daughter everyone admired. Now, she was forced to face the fact that her little sister wasn't just good with computers. I was a leader, a visionary, someone respected by people she herself wanted to impress. At first, she avoided me completely. She'd skip family dinners if she knew I'd be there. When we did cross paths, she was polite but distant, her voice overly formal, like she didn't know how to talk to me anymore. I understood why her entire identity had been built around being the successful one. My rise to success had shattered that illusion. Meanwhile, SafeNet was exploding with growth, thanks to Liam and BlackRock's endorsement. We were suddenly in demand with major corporations worldwide. Within a year, we had opened offices in London and Singapore, and were negotiating contracts in Europe and Asia. Our proprietary algorithm was now protecting trillions of dollars in financial assets. When Chloe and I had started this company in her uncle's garage, we never could have imagined this level of impact. One morning, I walked through our Boston headquarters and paused to watch our team in action. Dozens of employees were gathered around monitors, collaborating on new security features. The hum of conversation and keyboard clicks filled the air. "Look what we built," Chloe said softly beside me. Her eyes shone with pride. "From two broke girls with a dream." To this, I smiled, feeling a swell of gratitude. We did this together, despite our rapid growth. I was determined to maintain a healthy balance in my life. I bought a house on the coast, where I could escape the noise of the city and wake up to the sound of ocean waves. Every Friday evening, I'd drive there, take long walks on the beach, and let my mind unwind. It was my sanctuary, a place where I didn't have to be CEO Maya. I could just be me. Chloe made sure I didn't fall into old patterns of overwork, boundaries. Maya, she would remind me whenever I stayed too late at the office. "Remember why you built this life. You didn't do all this just to burn out." She was right, for so long. I had been trapped by my family's expectations. Now, I was free to set my own rules, and I intended to honor that freedom. Back at home, the tension with Isabella slowly began to thaw. One evening, she invited me to meet for coffee. It was the first time she had reached out since the Christmas reveal. When I arrived, she was already seated at a corner table, looking nervous. I sat down, unsure of what to expect. "Thanks for coming," she said, fidgeting with her cup. I wanted to apologize. I stayed quiet, letting her continue. "For years, I didn't see how unfair things were for you," Isabella admitted. "I was so wrapped up in my own life, in Mom and Dad's praise, that I didn't notice how badly you were treated." Her voice cracked, slightly. "When Liam told me who you really are, how respected you are in your field, it was like the ground shifted under my feet. I didn't know how to handle it." I took a deep breath. "It's not just about you knowing what I do, Isabella. It's about everything that came before that. The birthday parties I never had. The nights I stayed up cooking while you studied. The way Mum and Dad acted like I didn't matter." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I know, and I can't undo any of that. But I want to try to be a better sister now, if you'll let me." For a moment, I just looked at her, unsure of what to say. Finally, I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I'm willing to try," I said softly. "But this can't be like before. Our relationship has to be based on mutual respect." "Agreed," she said, relief flooding her face. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. As the months passed, my family began to adjust to the new reality. There were still awkward moments. Of course, at a family barbecue, my dad introduced me to one of his friends, saying proudly, "This is my daughter, Maya. She runs a cybersecurity company that protects banks around the world." I had to hide my shock. Hearing him say those words felt like a dream. For so long, he had dismissed my work entirely. Now, he was bragging about it. My mum even started asking me questions, not just about work, but about my life. She wanted to know about my house on the coast, my travels, even my favorite books. It was as if she was trying to get to know me for the first time. But I never forgot the past, as much as I appreciated their efforts. I kept clear boundaries. I visited when I wanted to, not when they demanded it. I offered help when I felt like it, not when they expected it. Chloe once asked me if I thought I'd ever fully forgive them. I thought about it for a long moment before answering. "Forgiveness isn't about pretending the past didn't happen," I said. "It's about deciding that the past doesn't control you anymore. I don't need them to be perfect. I just need them to treat me with respect." Chloe smiled. "And if they don't, then I walk away," I said simply, "because I finally know my own worth." One of the most surreal moments came at an industry gala in New York. SafeNet was being honored with an award for innovation in cybersecurity. Chloe and I walked onto the stage in front of hundreds of executives, cameras flashing all around us. As I accepted the award, I spotted Liam and Isabella in the audience, sitting beside my parents. For once, there was no tension in their faces, only pride. After the ceremony, Liam approached me with a smile. "Maya, your work has transformed how we handle security at BlackRock. It's been an honor partnering with you." I nodded. "Thank you, Liam, and thank you for always recognizing the value we bring." Isabella hugged me tightly afterward. "I'm so proud of you, Maya," she whispered, "and I'm grateful I get to call you my sister." For the first time in years, I believed she meant it. As SafeNet expanded internationally, Chloe and I faced new challenges, but they were the kind we welcomed. We opened a massive office in London, then another in Singapore. We hired teams across 3 continents and developed cutting-edge systems that set new standards for the entire industry. Ethan, now our chief security officer, was instrumental in these expansions. His leadership and deep understanding of both finance and tech helped us grow smoothly. One afternoon, he stopped by my office with a grin. "You know, Maya," he said, "sometimes I forget how far we've come. Then I look around and realize this company started with 2 people and a dream." I laughed. "And now we're protecting trillions of dollars worldwide." "Exactly," he said proudly. "We're not just a company anymore. We're a movement through all the growth and success." I never lost sight of what mattered most. I continued to nurture the relationships that truly brought me joy. Ethan, my close friends, and yes, even my family as it healed. On weekends, I hosted small dinners at my coastal home, filled with laughter and love. It was a stark contrast to the cold, performative gatherings of my childhood. I also invested in mentoring young women in tech, determined to create opportunities for others like me who had once been underestimated and overlooked. No one should have to fight this hard just to be seen. I told Chloe one evening as we reviewed applications for our new mentorship program. She smiled, squeezing my hand. "You're building more than a company. Maya, you're building a legacy." Her words stayed with me. As for my parents, I learned to accept them as they were, flawed, imperfect, but trying. There were still moments when old habits crept in, but I was quick to set boundaries, and to their credit, they respected those boundaries most of the time. One evening, as I left their house after a visit, my mum hugged me tightly. "I'm sorry it took us so long to see you clearly," she whispered. "But we do now. We see you, Maya." For the first time, I almost believed her. A year after that unforgettable Christmas, life looked completely different. SafeNet had grown beyond anything Chloe and I had ever imagined. We weren't just a company anymore. We were a global force in cybersecurity, protecting the world's most critical financial systems. We had offices in New York, London, Singapore, and were planning to open one in Sydney next year. Our team had grown from a handful of people working out of a garage to over 500 employees worldwide. But it wasn't just about numbers or revenue. Every time I saw a small business thrive because our systems protected them from hackers, I felt a deep sense of purpose. Every time a bank executive thanked us for preventing a breach, I knew we were making a real difference. One evening, Chloe and I were sitting in my office, looking over our 5-year growth plan. She leaned back in her chair with a satisfied smile. "You know," she said, "sometimes I think back to that first laptop you bought on a payment plan. We were broke, terrified, and full of dreams. Look at us now, Maya. We built this." I smiled, my heart swelling with gratitude. "We did, and we'll keep building. This is just the beginning." At home, things had also changed, but in a quieter, more gradual way. My parents, they hadn't magically transformed into perfect, supportive people overnight. But there was a noticeable difference in how they treated me. When I visited now, my mum didn't hand me a list of chores. Instead, she asked me to sit and tell her about my latest projects. Sometimes, she even cooked for me something that would have been unthinkable a year ago. My dad, who had once dismissed my career entirely, now bragged about me to his friends. I overheard him one evening at a family barbecue, proudly saying, "My daughter's company protects some of the biggest financial institutions in the world. She's a true leader." Hearing those words used to be my dream. Now they felt nice, but not necessary, because somewhere along the way, I had stopped needing their approval. Isabella's journey was perhaps the most complex. For months after the Christmas reveal, she wrestled with jealousy and insecurity. Her entire identity had been tied to being the golden child. Suddenly, she wasn't the shining star anymore. That was hard for her to face. But slowly, she began to grow. One evening, she came to my coastal house for dinner. As we sat on the deck watching the sunset, she opened up to me in a way she never had before. I used to think success was a zero-sum game, she admitted softly. If you were winning, it meant I was losing. But that's not true, is it? I shook my head. No, Isabella. There's enough room for both of us to shine. She gave me a small, genuine smile. I want to be happy for you, Maya, and I want to figure out who I am, not just who Mum and Dad told me to be. For the first time, I saw her not as my rival, but as my sister, a woman trying to find her own way, just like I had. SafeNet reached another milestone when we were invited to speak at a global cybersecurity summit in Singapore. Chloe and I flew out together, joined by Ethan and a few senior team members. As I stood on stage before an audience of thousands, sharing our vision for the future of digital security, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride. I wasn't just representing my company, I was representing every young woman who had ever been underestimated, every person who had been told they weren't enough. After my speech, a young engineer approached me, her eyes shining with excitement. Maya, your story inspired me to keep going, she said. I've faced so many roadblocks, but seeing what you've built makes me believe I can do it too. Her words brought tears to my eyes. You can, I told her firmly. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. Meanwhile, my mentorship program for young women in tech began to thrive. We paired aspiring engineers with experienced mentors, providing them with resources, networking opportunities, and scholarships. It was my way of giving back, of creating the support system I had always wished for when I was starting out. One afternoon, Chloe found me reviewing applications for the program. You're really making a difference. You know, she said, leaning against the doorway. This is more than a company now. It's a movement. I looked up, smiling through tears. That's the goal. I don't just want to build software. I want to build futures. As my professional life flourished, I made sure my personal life was just as fulfilling. Every weekend, I hosted small gatherings at my beach house. Unlike the cold, performative events of my childhood, these dinners were filled with laughter, warmth, and genuine connection. Chloe was always there. Of course, my partner in business and life, Ethan, often joined too, bringing his dry humor and strategic mind to our conversations. Even Isabella started coming by more often. She and I had begun building a real friendship, one based not on competition but on mutual respect. One evening, as we sat by the fire pit roasting marshmallows, Isabella turned to me and said, I finally get it. Maya, you didn't just prove Mum and Dad wrong. You proved something to yourself, and that's what really matters. I nodded, feeling tears sting my eyes. Exactly. That's the freedom I was looking for all along. Then, almost exactly a year after that disastrous Christmas dinner, my parents hosted another holiday gathering, but this time, things were different. Instead of me doing all the work, my mum had hired a catering company. Instead of dismissing my vacation plans, she asked me in advance what dates worked for me, and instead of introducing me as our daughter who works with computers, my dad proudly introduced me as Maya Bennett, CEO of SafeNet Solutions. It was surreal. Standing there in the same house where I had once felt invisible, now being seen and celebrated. At one point during the evening, my mum pulled me aside. Maya, she said, her voice trembling, I know we can never undo the way we treated you before, but I hope you know how proud we are now and how deeply sorry we are. I looked at her for a long moment before answering. I believe you, Mum, and I forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It just means we move forward. She hugged me tightly, and for the first time, I hugged her back without hesitation. As the night wound down, I stepped outside onto the porch. breathing in the crisp winter air. The yard was strewn with twinkling lights. Laughter drifting from inside, Chloe joined me, slipping her hand into mine. "Penny for your thoughts," she asked with a smile. I gazed up at the stars, reflecting on everything that had happened over the past year. I used to think the ultimate victory would be my parents finally seeing my worth, I said slowly. But now I realize the real victory was me seeing it for myself. Chloe squeezed my hand. "You've come so far, Maya. I'm proud of you. Thank you," I whispered. "I'm proud of me too." As the clock neared midnight, I made a silent promise to myself. Never again would I let anyone diminish me. Never again would I shrink myself to fit into someone else's expectations. I had built a life on my own terms, a life filled with love, purpose, and freedom, and I intended to keep building, one bold step at a time, because at the end of the day, true success isn't about titles or wealth or even recognition. It's about knowing your own worth, even when no one else does. And for the first time in my life, I truly did.